Hello everybody and welcome back to the Maple Conservative Girl podcast. My name is Danica and today I am covering yet another very interesting week in Canadian politics. Pierre Poilievre is demanding that Mark Carney admit that Canada is in fact in a recession, while the Liberal government continues to gaslight us Canadians by insisting that its economic plan is working despite growing economic concerns. We'll also discuss reports of tensions within the Liberal caucus, with questions being raised about unity inside the government and what that could actually mean for their majority government going forward. And finally, I'll take a look at the Liberal streaming tax. After arguing that foreign streaming giants should pay their fair share and support Canadian content, the government now appears to be backing away from that position following talks with the American government. So we've got recession concerns, Liberal caucus drama, and another government policy reversal to talk about. There's a lot to unpack here, so if you like this episode, please subscribe and share with somebody who you think might benefit from listening to this, and let's get right into it. Okay, so let's start with the recession. Last episode I spoke about this technical recession and how Carney was avoiding Pierre Poilievre, not showing up in the House of Commons, and not answering media questions because obviously how embarrassing, like the economic genius with his elbows up slogan, ending up in a recession and hiding from Canadians from accountability.
Well, there were a whole lot of competing political messages this week on the true state of the Canadian economy, with the opposition Conservatives seeking to redefine a technical recession as a full-blown recession and pin the blame for it on Prime Minister Mark Carney.
Canada's had 2 consecutive quarters of shrinking GDP, the only country in the G20 that can say that. Will the Prime Minister tell us whether we are in a recession or a technical recession?
What this government is doing is putting in place the foundations of an economy that will be stronger, more resilient, more independent.
The Prime Minister, once again, is failing the Canadian people by refusing to tell them the truth, that he caused a recession.
The data is going to be uneven, and we see some weakness. You have these cross currents as the economy is being fundamentally transformed. We're going to continue to work. We're making progress, but there's more to be done.
But throughout the week, economists, the major banks, and the Bank of Canada all pushed back on the notion that Canada is truly in a recession of any kind. And by the end of the week, a new jobs report added some weight to that side of the debate. Statistics Canada reported today that the Canadian economy added 88,000 jobs in May. The unemployment rate, well, it fell to 6.6% from 6.9% in April. And today, the C.D. Howe Institute's Business Cycle Council, the unofficial authority of what is or isn't a recession, ruled it is too early to conclude that the Canadian economy is in a recession because the data doesn't meet the standard of a pronounced, persistent, and pervasive decline in real economic activity.
So they're trying to tell us that the economic decline in Canada is not persistent. 3 out of the last 4 quarters, 75% of Mark Carney being our Prime Minister, there has been negative growth, consistent with the definition of a recession. It is persistent. The definition of a recession is a significant and widespread decline in economic activity that lasts more than a few months. What is the definition of a recession versus a technical recession in the CBC's eyes? Like, what's the difference? David Cochrane is supposed to be a neutral host. Like, we all can see that he's a Liberal, of course, but he is so clearly pushing for the Liberals. Like, we're not supposed to be able to see if he's a Liberal or a Conservative. Like, he's trying to push. It's clear that he's trying to say, oh, the Conservatives are trying to pin the blame on the Liberals. Yeah. Because they are in power. Who is to blame if not the people running our government, the people in charge? They attack the Conservatives when the Conservatives are not in power. It's like the Conservatives keep saying, oh, the single mom is not technically a single mom. You know, don't worry, you're just technically unemployed and technically unable to pay your bills. It's like, are you able to pay your bills or not? Are you technically able to or not? And then they talk about the job numbers. Not impressive, by the way. Every year in May, there is obviously the seasonal boom, and there's also FIFA, which is generating a lot of jobs. And I'm sure all of those jobs will be lost by the end of the summer, just like last November when they were saying, wow, look at all the jobs, as if none of the jobs were related to the Christmas boom. and then they were all lost in January when Christmas was over. It's not because of Carney's economic wizardry, it's because of the seasonal rise in jobs. Like I live in like a touristy area, and a lot of people now are starting to work in construction. Like all the guys who like were not working during the winter as much, now they're starting to like get their jobs back. And like May, it took a long time for like it to be sunny and nice, and you know, it was like a really long winter, so it took long for spring to arrive. And then so people have started really working in May in construction and in the service industry and in the tourist industry. And like, it's not because of Mark Carney that now there's a boom in the jobs. That's what happens every year. If there were 88,000 jobs every month of the year, not accounting for like the seasonal rise in jobs, then it would be like, oh wow, you know, he's doing a really good job. But I mean, that's not what's happening. He's just, we have more jobs in May because summer is coming. And this week, 12 million Canadians got the groceries and essentials rebate deposited directly into their account, which the Liberal voters argue that this is something good that Mark Carney has accomplished. They list it off as one of his accomplishments. This is not an accomplishment, okay? I don't think this is an accomplishment. I think it's proof that the government is not doing a very good job. If Canadians could afford groceries and rent and all of the essentials, then they wouldn't need the government to hand out a payment to them that they paid through taxes. Why not just strengthen the economy and give people more control over their own money? It looks like they just want us to be dependent on them and their little measly little handouts, waiting for a handout rather than having control over our own finances and our own prosperity. That is socialism. So Statistics Canada data showed another quarter of economic contraction. That immediately led to questions about whether Canada is now in a technical recession or not. What is the definition of a technical recession? Well, it occurs after 2 consecutive quarters of negative economic growth, which is exactly what we've had. 3 out of the last quarters, there's been negative growth. Pierre Poilievre seized on these numbers and demanded that Mark Carney acknowledge reality and the truth and admit that his Canada is now in a recession. He is at the helm of this government. He is the one in charge. And if Canada is in a recession, he should take responsibility for that instead of trying to gaslight us by saying that they're doing such a great job.
As we do all that, the data is going to be uneven. And, you know, we see some weakness, in part because of clear decisions by the government. So we have taken back control of immigration. That's meant the population growth has flattened. In fact, it's slowed, or it's been negative for the last 2 quarters. We have reined in government spending. So it had been growing close to 10%. It's growing less than 2% now. So that's also something that weighs on. There's some other choppiness in terms of how investment is happening. But we're also seeing at the same time the foundations coming into place, settling in for that stronger, more resilient economy. So for example, if you look at business investment, particularly in machinery and equipment, in R&D, in intellectual property, that's actually up quite sharply in the last couple of quarters, including the most recent quarter. If you look at household incomes, they are now growing strongly. They continue to grow faster than the rate of inflation. There's more to be done without question, but they're moving in the right direction. So you have these cross currents as the economy is being fundamentally transformed. We're going to continue to work. We're making progress.
I cannot stand when they say that wages are growing faster than the rate of inflation. Like, are you making more money than you were last year? Or are you paying more in inflation than you were last year? Because I'm not making more money than I was last year. Like, one of the reasons why that may be the case is because they have cut temporary foreign workers who, as soon as they leave, you know, they're not bringing in, like, they're low salary kind of people. So all those people leave, and so now the average salary goes up. But it doesn't mean that people are making more money. It just means that low wage people have left the country. And then he says, some weakness because we've reined in government spending and took control of immigration. Have you? Have you really reined in spending? Says the man who sent a $500,000 bill to taxpayers just last year alone for in-flight food, who spent almost $200,000 on in-flight food on 3 flights. Says the man who has the biggest deficit ever, who has sent billions of dollars to Ukraine in the last couple months.
Minister is telling Canadians that he is cutting costs in the public service. And today we see the PBO disagree with all of that. Personal expenses are projected to grow from $69.2 billion to $86 billion by 2030, 2031. And despite promising to borrow $65 billion this year in the spring economic statement, which we certainly just had, the government is on track to borrow $72 billion. That's a $7 billion overrun that was found today. Canadians certainly deserve a government that manages their money like it matters and not use Canadians as a credit card to bolster programs which don't work and Canadians don't need. And this, again, is the only Prime Minister to have driven our economy, the Canadian economy, the only economy in the G7 into a recession.
According to Carney and François-Philippe Champagne, our finance minister, they are apparently good fiscal managers. Well, Carney's newly appointed PBO, a woman who went to school with Carney, is saying otherwise. For the next 5 years, the PBO projects federal deficits will average $4.6 billion higher annually than the government's April projections, which April was just last month, which is already ridiculous to begin with. And he also says that we're in a recession basically because they reined in immigration. Is he admitting that we're not bringing in people who bring economic sustainable value to this country? Mass immigration artificially increases GDP because it can increase total GDP without necessarily increasing prosperity per person. So imagine a pizza cut into 10 slices for 10 kids. Each kid gets 1 slice. Now, 5 more kids show up, but nobody makes a bigger pizza. So each kid gets a smaller piece. That's similar to how mass immigration can make GDP go up. More people means more workers and more spending, so the economy gets bigger. But, if houses, roads, hospitals, and jobs don't grow just as fast, which is exactly what's happening, the average person does not feel richer. On paper, the economy looks larger, but its everyday life people can end up competing for a smaller share of what's available. And everything goes up in price because, as Pierre Poilievre has stated many times before, if you have more dollars chasing fewer goods, the price of those goods goes up. They're basically admitting that their immigration policies avoided us going into a recession because it artificially raised the GDP of this country. Now, the Liberals, I see them online, they say, well, we can't have depopulation like what the Conservatives want without going into a recession. So Carney's kind of at a loss on both ends here. But the thing is, it's this government that created the problem. And now they're saying that they're going to fix it. But anyways, that is his argument. His answer is, oh, it's not because of our failed policies, We're not in a recession because we have failed our constituents and Canadians. It's because we're reining in spending, which is false, and we're reining in immigration. Now, supporters of the government would argue that economic transitions take time, it's only been a year, we need more than a year to see growth. Even though Mark Carney said that he was going to build Canada strong at speeds unimaginable, right? Was he lying? He's an economic genius, right? Shouldn't he know that it would take time to build the economy? Why would he tell us that, he's going to build at speeds unimaginable, and now he's saying, well, it's going to take time, and, we're doing good, but we could do better, and it's going to take time. It's Well, I argue that it shouldn't take this much time to start building the economy. If they would just remove the anti-energy laws, just that right there, that right there would cause a boost. And if they would stop pushing for the net zero and stop subsidizing companies that are failing because they want them to succeed, trying to control the winners and losers of the economy rather than just like getting out of the way, cutting red tape, cutting regulations, and just kind of letting the economy speak for itself and do its own thing. They want to control the winners and the losers of the economy, and they subsidize and they give grants, and just if they got a deal with America. Look at Javier Milei in Argentina, completely shifting the economy through what? Through cutting government spending heavily, reducing subsidies. Why are we subsidizing companies that are failing? Like, if you need a subsidy to survive, like, it's a failure. He reduced money printing. He pursued a balanced budget, which the government, remember when Justin Trudeau said, the budget will balance itself? Well, Mark Carney's deficit is like bigger than Justin Trudeau's, and he's spending way more than Justin Trudeau, and he's putting us more and more in debt. But he's saying that, we're not spending, we're investing. Investing in what? In subsidizing companies that are going bankrupt? And Javier Milei in Argentina totally transformed his economy in less than 18 months. And yeah, in Argentina, there was like it went down before it went up, which is what Carney is arguing is going to happen. Like, we're going down, but he's going to transform the economy. We have to go down, and things are going to be hard for a while, but soon, the economy is going to rise, and everything's going to be better, and prosperity is just going to be all over the place in Canada. But I don't think that's going to happen. I really don't think so. I think that it's just going to decline and decline and decline. I don't think that the economy is going to get better. I don't think that this is right before an economic boom, because he's not, reducing subsidies. He's not cutting government spending heavily. He's not reducing money printing. He's not pursuing a balanced budget. He's not deregulating parts of the economy. He's not getting out of the way. He's not doing any of those things. So how are we going to see a boost? I don't think that's going to happen. And maybe I'm wrong, but I really don't think so. And they say immigration reductions, spending restraint, and efforts to restructure the economy are creating short-term pain in pursuit of long-term gains. But like I said, I really don't think that that's going to be the case. And because how can things change if they hold the same ideology? The liberal net zero socialist ideology is not transformational for the economy. It's not going to get better if they don't massively change things very fast. And they're not doing that. They're not building Canada strong at speeds unimaginable. They're just not. And now we're in a recession, a technical recession, whatever you want to call it. Doesn't matter what it's called. It's 2 quarters of negative GDP growth. That's what it is. And they're not taking responsibility for it. They're saying that, well, we're doing this and we're doing that, and one day things will be better. Yeah, well, Canadians are lined up at the food banks now. Canadians don't care about your little handout. If the economy was doing well, we wouldn't need a handout. If the economy is shrinking and families are struggling, we don't care what label the government chooses to use. We care about whether life is going to get better or worse, and I think it's an objective statement to say that Canada is not getting better. It's getting worse. It's getting worse. Conservatives say that the Liberals are refusing to acknowledge failure, which they are. They gaslight you and me by saying that they're doing an amazing job, that it's just going to take time. Meanwhile, 1 year ago, they were saying that they're going to build Canada strong at speeds unimaginable. Yet we're in a recession 1 year later. And they say that we're in a recession not because of their failures, but because, we're reining in spending and immigration. Just you wait, everybody. Prosperity is on its way. Our economy will be transformed. Please. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. No, it's not. And when the Conservatives point out that we're in a recession because of bad Liberal policy over the last 11 years, they say, well, Conservatives are so negative. Can't you just be positive about Canada and stop talking Canada down? Stop spitting all over Canada. Be positive like us Liberals. We're building Canada strong. Please. What a load of BS. Tell that to the single mom who can't afford rent lined up at the food banks, or to all the people losing their jobs, all the people going bankrupt, losing their homes due to high interest rates. Do you actually believe these people? Are you trusting the Liberal process? Because I'm not.
Why aren't you more worried about a recession?
Oh, we're very worried about our economy. We're worried about the trade winds and the challenges our economy faces. I think Canadians made a choice, obviously over a year ago now, to elect a prime minister with business and economic credentials, a prime minister that's a statesman, prime minister that's going to travel the world. I mean, just got back from India, Australia, Japan, China, signing trade deals worth billions of dollars for our economy, going to be, bring thousands of jobs to our economy. So to answer that question, Fashy, of course we're worried. Like, we know that we trade a lot of our product, obviously, with the United States. We know there's challenges there. So, you know what? If you're running a business, if you're running a government, you deal with the hand you're dealt. You step back, you say, what can we do? What can we do to strengthen our economy? What can we do to build our economy? And I'd argue that, despite the leader of the opposition who seems to be celebrating, seems to be, cheering on, in his mind, bad news, I'd argue that there's a lot of very, very positive indicators to our economy, and I like where we're heading in the future.
The Conservatives are not enjoying this. They're not happy about a recession or cheering it on at all. Like, it's just political spin. They just want the government to admit that they failed us. First step to recovery is admitting that you have a problem, right? And they play victim so bad. Poor us. We play the hand that we're dealt with, and Trump dealt us a bad hand. And it's all Trump's fault and his tariffs. It's all because of them, the Americans. That's why we're in a recession, everybody. Has nothing to do with us. It's because of them. It's somebody else's fault. It's never our fault. And the PM has been out there working his butt off all year. He's signing trade deals, bringing thousands of jobs to Canada. Where are the jobs? And yet we're in a recession. But they're positive about the future? How can you be positive about the future when we're in a recession? When the economy is stagnant, flat, not growing at all, but they're positive about the future? Instead of talking about the recession that we're in because of their failed policies and their failure to get a deal with Trump, it's not Trump's fault. It's their fault. They're not getting a deal with Trump. They always blame Trump. It has nothing to do. Yeah, he put tariffs on us, but we're not negotiating with him. We're not making a deal with him. So in the end, it's our fault, right? And you know what would actually build Canada strong? Getting rid of this incompetent government.
As a good friend of mine says, we need to buckle up. We need to take those headwinds head on and control what we can control. And any good business owner, any good government is going to look and say, what can we do? We can sit back and we can just kind of fold our hands and let it come to us, or we can be proactive. Any good business person is going to be proactive. That's what our Prime Minister is doing. He's saying, look, our largest trading partner, no secret to anybody watching here tonight, is the United States of America. We have challenges with that trade relationship right now. Did we expect that 5 years ago? Of course not. We saw it coming about a year ago. So what do we do about that? We pivot. We build our economy. We diversify. We become not reliant, as the Prime Minister says, but we build resilience by traveling the world, by, trading with countries that believe in the same things we believe. We've got so much that the world wants that we can do this. We can lean on each other. We can build from within. We will create thousands of jobs, whether it's investments in infrastructure,
with great respect, Prime Minister, when will that materialize? You have been, the Prime Minister and your government has been employing comparisons with the G7, to highlight the facts that you want to highlight. But there are other very salient ones that aren't just backwards looking. I mean, 112,000 people who lost their job, that's not looking backwards. That affects their future. 1 in 4 people who, according to the Food Bank organization, is experiencing food insecurity as we speak. That's not looking backwards. When you keep saying, just trust us, we've got this. It's a hard time, but we've got this. Doesn't that fall on deaf ears to those people who are suffering right now and neglect to address the significance of what they are experiencing?
It's all slogans with this government and empty promises and announcements, always announcements, and they're victims. They're narcissists. Everything that he said here is so, out of touch with reality and with what's going on with the actual Canadians. He says that we have what the world wants. They all say that. Yet they're not getting out of the way for investors to invest. They're not building Canada strong. Doing sales elsewhere and traveling the world, and they praise Mark Carney for doing this. Wow, he's going around the world and he's signing this trade deal and that trade deal, and they're not actual deals, they're MOUs, they're non-binding. And doing sales elsewhere and trade deals elsewhere will do nothing compared to getting a deal with America. All they have to do is get a deal with America. That's it. That's all they have to do. And then Vashi goes on to ask him in this interview why investors are not investing. And he's like, I can't tell you why one company chooses not to invest here. Well, I'll tell you why investors won't invest here. The Liberals have made it so icky and unattractive for investors. They're all investing in America because we have a government-controlled everything. And investors have to jump through a million hoops just to do business, and then whoops, rugs pulled out from under them because the government regulations. And why would anybody invest here? Why would any rich person want to invest here? Just a bunch of gaslighting by all these Liberals rather than taking ownership of their bad policies. They blame Trump. And they say that they're doing amazing. Conservatives are just so negative to point out that they're failures. All they have to do is get a deal with Trump. That's all they have to do. Literally. And then they say that they won't use our natural resources as leverage. The world wants what we have, but we won't use what we have as leverage to get a deal with our largest trading partner. Does that make sense? Talk about pride and ego.
New reporting in the Toronto Star is highlighting potential issues within Carney's caucus, with some anonymous MPs saying the PM yells and is not open to being challenged, but other MPs are offering a different perspective.
I have never seen the Prime Minister act other than respectfully, and he is someone who is used to being in a boardroom, and I appreciate the back and forth with him.
Have you seen him yell at some people in a meeting? I haven't seen it. No, you've not seen it. I have not. No.
So you characterize it as a disagreement and not than being.
Well, I've certainly, like I say, it was basically what we had was a disagreement. Exactly.
Here to break down Carney's caucus management style and how MPs are responding, Chantal, Andrew, and Althea. Of course, the reporting in the Toronto Star done by our friend here, Althea.
Well, in one sense, this is nothing new. Prime ministers have been treating their caucuses, party leaders in general have been treating their caucuses like the dirt under their feet for the better part of 60 years, with rare exceptions.
Brian Mulroney would be an exception. I would just throw that out
with
there.
Rare exceptions. But even with Mulroney, I mean, the amount of real power that MPs he had, even under Mulroney, was very little. He just treated them better. So that's the news here, is that they're, even by the standards of party leaders and prime ministers past, and even by the standards of subservience that MPs have learned to behave under every leader, even by these standards, this prime minister has pushed it even further, to the point where the habitually subservient MPs are at least talking off the record. You'll notice that the ones who are complaining are off the record, the ones who have no problem are speaking on the record. So there is trouble being stored up here for Mark Carney. We've already discussed many times in this program his authoritarian streak. He also suffers, I think, from smartest guy in the room syndrome. And if you've always been the smartest guy around the table, or at least think you are, in his case, probably with some justice, it can impair your judgment. You're not able to see other points of view. You're not able to hear signs of trouble brewing, not just in your party, but in the country. You're not getting all the facts, and you can be too locked up in your own brilliant schemes and not see the flaws in them. So sometimes the smartest guy in the room doesn't necessarily have the best judgment. And
smartest guy in the room syndrome. That's what they call it when it comes out that apparently Mark Carney is yelling at people in his caucus. Isn't it funny how when someone leaves Pierre Poilievre's caucus through a sleazy backroom deal that we are not a part of, it's wall-to-wall coverage about how terrible of a leader he is. They need to know all the juicy details and imprint in our minds that Pierre Poilievre is not fit to run a caucus, therefore not fit to run the country. Even the major far-right conservatives are leaving his caucus. He must be so bad. But when it's a Liberal MP leaving caucus, there's like 4 or 5 by-elections coming up triggered by Liberals leaving. And nothing. It's just that he's the smartest guy in the room. And, now MPs are saying that they're basically scared of Mark Carney because he yells at them. I mean, what kind of boss, first of all, yells at his employees? And, these employees represent Canadians. They should have a place at the table no matter how small the writing is or how different their voice is. Then it's like excuses, right? Like on the CBC on Rosemary Barton's show, it's like Andrew Coyne here saying that, he's the smartest guy in the room. Like that's the excuse. Like, oh, because he's the smartest guy in the room, he's above everybody else and he's just so smart that he doesn't care for all the simpletons and, he doesn't see, he's so smart that he can't see inside the brains of people who are less smart than him. Like... He knows things that other MPs don't know because he's a banker and he's smart. Like, it's that makes it okay that he yells. They're trying to cover for him. And who's to say that Mark Carney is smarter than the other MPs? Who's to say that he's the smartest guy in the room? Like, how can he say that? Just because the Prime Minister is the Prime Minister doesn't mean that he should be allowed to yell at these people. And who knows? Summer's coming up, the MPs are going home to their families, and maybe these unnamed MPs will have time to think about working for a man like this. And they have a very slim majority, so they could lose their seat in BC to the Conservatives, because look at the provincial BC election where Carrie Lynn Finlay, an actual Conservative, won the leadership of the Conservative Party, and with the David Eby doing, the whole native ban private property thing, a lot of people are turning towards the Conservative Party because they're fed up with the NDP. They could lose that riding to Avi Lewis if he decides to run. Their majority is not a for sure thing. It's like on the rocks. And Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives have consistently argued that the Liberal government is so out of touch with ordinary Canadians. They totally are. And if internal caucus frustration is indeed growing, even if it's quiet, it reinforces the Conservative narrative that decisions are being centralized, that the government is using a top-down approach, that debate inside the governing party is being limited. Apparently he's telling MPs that if they don't have anything constructive to say, if they're complaining, he don't want to hear about it. And the Conservatives also argued that the Liberals are just trying to manage the optics, right? Like empty slogans, empty promises. Some say that Carney is a strong leader. A lot of people think in Canada that Carney is a strong leader, but the Conservatives think that he's just a controller. He's, according to unnamed MPs, he's yelling at his employees. If my boss yelled at me, I wouldn't want to work for them. Who wants to work in that kind of environment? And if this is all true, it causes resentment in the party, right? Like, who the hell wants to get yelled at? I'm sure these MPs being dismissed and yelled at are not thinking to themselves, oh, but, Mark Carney's the smartest guy in the room, so he's better than me, so, it's justification for him to yell at me. Like, no. They're probably pissed off. Whether this is even true or not, politically, the more existence of these stories, the more that people talk about it, and the fact that they're being discussed at all could be damaging to the Liberals in the long run. Okay, moving on to the next story, the Streaming Act.
Canadians deserve to have production, creation, and their stories told by Canadians, for Canadians, in Canada, by these global giant platforms. There is no tax. There is no tax, period. It is imaginary. It is fake. And this is the same people, Mr. Speaker, who want to defund the CBC, who want to kill our cultural industries, who who want to take Canada out of every single piece of...
The Liberal government passed a law that lets Ottawa force Netflix and other streaming companies to pay into Canadian content, meaning that they want these giants to pay, right? Because they despise the billionaires and shame on them for making money, right? They say it's because they want to support Canadian culture in an increasingly digital world, to make sure Canadian stories don't get crowded out by large global platforms. First of all, let us choose what we want to watch. Like, stop trying to force us to watch Canadian content. If we want to watch American television, we should be allowed to. So, the CRTC then tried to raise those costs even higher, which would likely get passed on to Canadians through higher subscription prices. And Trump doesn't like that because we're basically taxing American companies to, quote, support Canadian content. So after backlash and pressure from the United States, the Liberals stepped in and basically backed down and told the CRTC to scale it back. And it's funny because the Conservatives had just put out a motion that was voted on May 28th, which called on the Liberal government to reject and eliminate the CRTC's increase of the streaming contribution requirement from 5% to 15%, basically tripling it, and stop what they called a streaming tax. In response, the Liberals voted in support of the increase and said that the Conservatives were lying and that there was no tax. And yet, a couple days later, when they go to the United States, they back down to Donald Trump and remove it and say this.
Is that another concession to the U.S.?
It is another step to reinforce affordability for Canadians. This is not the time to raise the cost for Canadians. When the CRTC takes decisions, as they did last summer, with respect to telecom and telecom sharing on broadband, which helped to lower costs for Canadians, we're very much in support. But this is not the time to make Canadians pay another $50 a year.
So then why did they just vote for it? It is a concession. His elbows are down and he's trying to say, oh, we care about Canada's affordability. Please, if you cared at all about affordability, you would have voted with the Conservatives on their motion and not be backtracking. Conservatives were right all along. And if the policy was essential for protecting Canadian culture, why back down? And if it wasn't worth defending, why spend years insisting that it was necessary? One week, the government ministers say American tech companies must contribute, which, by the way, the far-left socialists in the government, how do they not understand basic math? If they force companies to pay more to protect Canadian content like they say that they want to do, which is a load of bull, then don't they realize that, like, those companies, they're just going to pass those costs down to us? Do you really think that they'll just swallow those costs and take the hit? No. They'll either make things more expensive for us by increasing what we owe them, or they'll just remove their services from Canada. And then the next week, after meetings in Washington, in America, the policy suddenly becomes negotiable. Did they actually believe in this, or are they backing down to America? Because that's what it looks like. If you know that there was a motion from the Conservatives that they voted against, like the Liberals voted for the increase of this streaming tax of 3 times higher, like if you don't know about this, you think that the government is like all for affordability. But if you know about this, that they voted against it, then you know it's all BS. They don't believe in it. It's all political messaging to make it look like they believe in Canadian content. We're for Canadian content. Make those Americans pay. Elbows up. Those billionaires must pay. So now what's happening is that instead of making them pay, the government is now taking $600 million of our taxpayer money and replacing what they would have gotten from the Streaming Act, making these American streaming companies pay. But now these companies are not going to be paying anymore, so they're using our money to support Canadian content. The CBC maybe? Like, why do they get to choose where our money goes like this? Like, Is it the CBC that's the Canadian content that's going to get $600 million? Like it says right here on the government website, it says, Government of Canada announces immediate support to strengthen Canadian culture and ensure Canadian content remains affordable. Well, what if we want American content? Oh no, you gotta pay more. You gotta pay more. Canada is a country of storytellers. Canadian stories bring us together. They reflect who we are as a country and support good jobs for artists, creators, producers, and workers across the cultural sector. Do you see how they try to make... This is directly off the website, by the way, the Government of Canada website. They make it look like, oh, we care about the artists and the producers and the workers and the culture of Canada. Canada's new government is committed to supporting Canadian culture and making life more affordable for Canadians. That is why today, the Honourable Mark Miller, another failure, Minister of Canadian Identity and Culture and Minister responsible for official languages, announces federal investments of $600 million per year to provide stability and immediate support to Canada's audio and audiovisual sectors to keep our culture accessible and affordable for all Canadians. Why? Like, why? And what are these audio and audiovisual sectors? Is it the CBC? Like, why are they choosing where to put our money? Like, just get out of the way. So now we're funding what would have come from these companies, and it weakens their argument that big companies should pay, because in the end, it's the taxpayer on the hook for this stupidity. And as if the week wasn't dramatic enough, Donald Trump inserted himself into the conversation. He shared an article discussing Canada's recession and added his now familiar 51st state remark. And Canadian leaders pushed back. Mark Carney reiterated that Canada is not for sale. Doug Ford even delivered a similar response. Now, regardless of whether wherever you stand politically, most Canadians reject the idea of becoming part of the United States, which is funny because some Canadians are okay with becoming part of the European Union. Like, why aren't the Liberals feeling the same way as when Trump called us the 51st state when Trudeau was in charge? They couldn't stand it. Why is it that Mark Carney avoids scrutiny and Canadians still like him? Like, Liberals would rather be in a recession, starving, cold, homeless, than become part of America. That's where we're at right now. So when you take a step back and look at the entire week, a pattern emerges. First, Canadians are told not to worry about recession headlines. Don't worry about the recession, everybody. It's just a recession, just a technical recession. It's not a real recession. Then they're told controversial policies like the Streaming Act are very necessary. We love Canadian content. Stop subsidizing everything. And then with a little pressure from the Trump administration, the same policies have become negotiable. And throughout it all, government messaging remains focused on telling Canadians that everything is moving in the right direction, even though we're going deeper and deeper into a recession. But we're headed in the right direction, everybody. Well, we conservatives argue that leadership starts with honesty. If the economy is shrinking, admit it, and admit that you're to blame, that you've made a mistake, that you've made mistakes, and now you're going to change course and do better things. But they're not doing that. If a policy isn't working, change it. If Canadians are struggling, acknowledge that reality. We don't appreciate being told not to believe our own lived experiences. So the coming months will tell us whether Canadians accept the Liberal explanation that today's weakness is the price of tomorrow's prosperity. Are we just going down right now and headed for a huge economic boom and tons of prosperity in this country? Only time will tell. Or will the people of Canada conclude that the government has simply lost touch with reality? So let me know what you think. Is Canada in a recession? Was the streaming tax reversal a pragmatic move or a political retreat, elbows down? And how much damage do these economic headlines do to the Carney government's credibility? So that should be all for today, everybody. I hope that you have a great weekend. Don't forget to subscribe and share with somebody who you think might benefit from listening to this. And I will see you next time. Bye.